CoinDesk is in Miami for BTC 22, and earlier I had a chance to speak to Fred Thiel, CEO at Marathon Digital Holdings, on this morning's announcements by the presidents of Honduras' economic hub Prospera and the Portuguese autonomous region Madeira on their plans to expand Bitcoin adoption. Have a listen.
I mean, reaction is everything that drives the further adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender or its use case, that promotes its use case, I think is a great thing. You know, we saw the impact of El Salvador, of Bitcoin being declared legal tender there. Now it's a question of adoption. I think in the European countries, you have a slightly higher level of understanding of what Bitcoin is and how it works, a little bit less skepticism. And so I think what you'll see is a continued adoption. You're going to see this in many countries. I think there are a number of countries in Latin America that are looking to drive this forward. There are a number of countries in Africa that are having conversations about this. There are states in the US that are going to accept Bitcoin for paying taxes. So I think you're going to see broader and broader adoption of Bitcoin because it's kind of, Bitcoin is already kind of regulated from a perspective. It's a commodity. We know how to tax it. We know how to hold it. And so I think it's just great. Anything that builds the further adoption of Bitcoin is great for the Bitcoin network and for the blockchain industry.
Why do you think we're seeing more receptivity of Bitcoin in Latin America, in places, in this case, Portugal, than say in other places in North America?
Well, it's the use case. You know, think about the use case in El Salvador. You have 23% of GDP as foreign remittances being sent by essentially families who have emigrated and they send money home. It's $150 a month they send home, but if they're $25 to $50 in fees, a lot of that is being eaten up. And so by being able to send money in a secure way with no fees, it lowers the fee side, the cost side, and it increases the amount of money the family member gets considerably. Additionally, countries with high inflation, Bitcoin as a currency provides a place for people to store essentially their assets. So they earn money in the local currency, convert it right away to Bitcoin, hold it in Bitcoin, and then when they need to spend it, they convert it back into the local currency. So I think what you see is any country with high inflation, historical high inflation, countries where you have a lot of family members that are sending money back and forth. There are a lot of people from Portugal that work throughout Europe. Now granted, Europe is on the euro currency, but the ability to use crypto as a use case is growing. And we've seen now from the Ukraine crisis, people are worried about the ability for governments to essentially grab a hold of their assets and block their ability to have financial independence. So I think you're going to start seeing a lot of third world countries, poorer parts of nations adopting the use case on one level, and then you're seeing a totally different use case in countries like the US, where it's as a store of value, more for asset managers. And you look at the White House executive order, 40 million people in the US are using Bitcoin, right? That is a huge number. And Bitcoin will become most probably a single issue item for voters in the election. Well, you'll see people who will vote for candidates that support crypto, even though they wouldn't have voted for that candidate over that candidate's social programs before, most probably. So I think this is continued adoption, further penetration in the system.
On that note, in terms of institutional adoption, there's a lot of anticipation around Jack Mallers' strike and a potential partnership with Apple. What could that mean for the industry?
Well, one of the biggest things holding back rapid adoption for Bitcoin as something people hold in their wallet and spend is how difficult it is to hold in a wallet and spend it. You have your account on Coinbase, you have your proprietary wallet, you need to transfer it into a place that's been able to spend. If, for example, Strike were to partner with Apple or any other platform that has a huge amount of wallets and enable those wallets now to hold crypto, purchase crypto, and spend in crypto, adoption will just go up. It's kind of, imagine if you built a wallet into WhatsApp, Instagram, Apple Message, you would have hundreds and hundreds of millions of people around the world who instantaneously could hold, buy, and trade Bitcoin.
At the same time, and this was this morning, Bitcoin, the crypto markets were actually down, facing a lot of pressure from the global macro uncertainty out there. So I wonder if you could comment on, how crypto and Bitcoin will maneuver amid this climate.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of institutional holdings of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is viewed as a risk-on asset. When people are seeing the stock market decline, portfolio managers start selling equity positions, they pare them back, and they pare back across their whole portfolio. equities, bonds, and crypto. So you see a lot of institutional selling when markets move up and down, and that's been a pattern. There's been a huge amount of correlation between Bitcoin and the stock market, especially the NASDAQ in recent time. But we're starting to see some decoupling. You know, the Ukraine use case, being able to carry your assets in your pocket or with 12 words to your key and leave the country, has provided an incentive for more people to start doing this. So I think we're going to be in a very choppy market for some time, but you know, big announcement from an Apple and Strike regarding a wallet, Bitcoin availability in Instagram or WhatsApp, those will drive adoption. We'll see that buck the trend.
And you also have some news yourself. So you are leaving Montana for Texas. Tell us what's going on.
Sure. So we made a goal last year that we wanted to be 100% carbon neutral in all our Bitcoin mining operations by the end of this year. We have been mining for a portion of our mining fleet at a coal plant in Hardin, Montana. And while we really appreciate having had the opportunity to work with them there, we don't want to just offset our coal emissions and keep mining Bitcoin there. We want to use renewable, sustainable energy. In Texas, we're building, together with Compute North, a Bitcoin mining operation where we sit behind the meter at a wind farm using wind energy that's excess energy, and then using some energy off the grid to supplement. And that allows us to be more and more green, using a greater and greater percentage of renewable energy, because we want this industry to not be viewed as an industry that's harming the ecology of the planet, not harming the climate, and playing a great role in balancing grids and providing extra energy to consumers versus the opposite.
On that note, I've been asking this of all the miners. You know, Greenpeace, as well as Chris Larson, the co-founder of Ripple, and other climate change activists are on a campaign to change the code of Bitcoin because they feel that proof of work, which uses a lot of energy, consumes a lot of energy to verify transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain, is bad for the environment. I wonder what you would say to this whole campaign.
Well, Chris Larson has a vested interest in trying to take down Bitcoin because he's behind a company called Ripple, and Ripple is effectively a competitor to Bitcoin. So that's one item. So I wouldn't trust anything Chris Larson does because he's funding Greenpeace, and they're using a study which is questionable in its fact pattern anyway. What you have to really realize is the whole global Bitcoin market industry today uses less electricity than we use for holiday lights in this country, less electricity than Google and Facebook use in their data centers. And yes, it's more electricity than a small country. And I'm Swedish, so when they use the Swedish comparison, I get it. It's less than 10 million people. But what you have to really realize is there is no other blockchain technology that is secure like Bitcoin. Look at all the hacks happening on proof-of-stake networks, these DeFi networks, 720 million the other day. You even have Vitalik Buterin saying, you know, security in Ethereum is kind of good enough. Well, it's not. There is no independent authority there. So the Bitcoin blockchain has its detractors who approach it from the energy side. Before, they were approaching it from the, money laundering and that. We've now proven to the industry, to the world, that Bitcoin is more transparent than the fiat system, and there's much more money laundering that happens in fiat currency. If you look at the energy FUD story, over 60% of miners in the US are mining using essentially renewable energy sources. The Bitcoin Mining Council publishes those numbers each quarter. And as an industry globally, we're over 50%. So, you know, I think what Chris and his team of FUD makers needs to realize is A, there isn't an energy shortage in the US. We produce 14% more energy than we consume, and there's no reason for power generators to build more wind and solar because they get curtailed from the grid because the grid has no need for their energy other than maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. So we provide a huge service to the grid by being a baseload customer.